name is Jay Vega. I'm a volunteer for Junior Achievement and I work for Microsoft. I'm here today with my colleague and a leader at Microsoft called Mario. So, Mario, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi everyone, and hi Jay. My name is Mario Viamin. I work for Microsoft out of the Reno office, and I'm a director of finance with Microsoft.
Could you tell us a little bit about your job and why you chose it, Mario?
Yeah, so perhaps I could explain a little bit what we're doing at Microsoft in Reno. The way to think about Reno is to think about a digital factory, basically, where we conduct a certain number of operations that are related to ensuring that we sell and that we can ship software, although most of it is done, of course, digitally these days and over online these days. But that's basically what we do is we sell to our customers, we process the transactions, and we ensure that the software services are being delivered. And so, as part of that, my finance team supports portions of these processes from an accounting point of view. So we ensure that the transactions are accounted for properly in our financial statements. And we perform a certain number of other functions related to revenue recognition, for instance. And I can get into more details if you want me about revenue recognition. It gets a bit tactical or a bit technical, but we
Yeah.
can do that if there's interest. And compliance. So compliance is about making sure that our processes are in line with all the regulations that we need to be compliant with.
Yeah. What does that mean with you specifically yourself? What does your day-to-day look like?
Well, for instance, so Microsoft is not one company. It's actually a multitude of separate companies that then are consolidated into what we call Microsoft corporations. But in fact, we operate with actually hundreds of different companies all over the world, and also out of Nevada, we have about 10 different companies that are part of Microsoft. And so each one of these companies has an obligation to have financial statements. So what that means is there's some number of ways that we account for our revenues, our cost of goods, our operating expenses, the assets that we have on our balance sheet. And so my team is responsible for ensuring that that accounting is being done and is being done correctly.
Mhm.
So this is one of the responsibilities that we have.
Okay.
Um, in terms of and again briefly, I don't want to get too much into details, but revenue recognition is also a very important concept. So what that means is if you're dealing with physical goods, for instance, so yourself, you can go to a store and you buy a sweatshirt. Well, from an accounting point of view, when you buy that sweatshirt, the store gets to recognize the revenue from the transaction right away. Um,
Hmm.
in the software business, it's a bit different because typically when we sell software, we support the usage of the software over time. We also upgrade the software over time, and so from an accounting point of view, you do not get to recognize the sale of the software right away. You have to recognize it over time. Now, this is very simplified, but this is actually quite a complex set of considerations that go into how we recognize our revenue at Microsoft. And this is just one example. So my team spend a lot of time focusing on that and making sure that it gets done in the right way.
Hmm.
Um, and I get to be involved with some of the things that they do.
That's fantastic. What do you love about your work?
What do I
What?
love about it?
Yeah. What do you love about your job?
Yeah, what I love about it specifically, and then that's one thing that I think will resonate with a lot of my colleagues at Microsoft, is that you actually do get to define your own job in a very meaningful way. We hire people that we believe have great talent and great potential, and we ensure that when they get hired into a certain job, that they can apply their own view and their own knowledge over time to make the job the best that it can be. And so, you would call this empowerment, or you would call this sort of ability to define your own roles. But this is one thing that I enjoy particularly at Microsoft, and I've enjoyed all my life actually in other positions, is the fact that you sort of get to apply your skills, your experience, your judgment to your own job and make it the way that you want it to be.
Yeah, I quite agree. Actually, same experience here. When you were in middle or high school, what did you want to be, and how does it connect to where you are today?
It's interesting because I see it with my kids now. Is that there's clearly some people that have very defined ideas of what they want to be when they're younger, and in many cases they get to make that their careers as they grow up.
Hmm.
I was one of those individuals that had absolutely no clue. So I perhaps I knew what I did not want to be, right? More than I knew what I wanted to be. So
Hmm.
that's interesting too. But no, in high school I had no career already figured out for myself. It took me. I was in my 20s and even later than that when I finally figured out some of the things that I like to do
Yeah.
versus other things that I didn't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's good. That's good. How many different types of jobs have you had, and do any of them, relate to your current position?
Yeah. I think it was more of a again it was more of a journey for me to think about the type of jobs that I wanted. And a lot of it has been just a combination of opportunity that I was given, as well as maybe some things that I showed other people that I could be good at. I actually started as a business consultant right after, so I went to business school, right? So
Hmm.
I was trained as in business, and after business school, I still didn't have a really good idea of what I wanted to do. So I went into business consulting, right, which is another way of sort of giving yourself a couple of more years of learning and doing different things. And as a business consultant, I worked in pharmaceuticals, I worked in banking, I worked in industry, and still. Haven't really figured out the types of roles that I really want to do. And it's not something that it's not something that I was seeking, right? I wasn't asking myself, what I want to be this and I want to do that. I was more interested in the learning process and in just doing my best every day, which is what I was trying to do at the time, right, right out of business school.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. What was your first ever job, and how did you get hired?
Yeah, so my first job was as a business consultant. I was hired. I was fortunate that the business school that I was in, different consulting companies were coming over for, talent hiring roadshows, if you will, right? So they would come and interview us right on business school, and I was fortunate to find one of the consulting companies that I had interest in, and they had interest in me, and so I did my internship with them, and the internship worked well, and they made me an offer to join them after graduation, which was 6 months later. That's how I found my first job.
Yeah, what was it? What did you learn anything negative or positive in that role?
Well, I think I most definitely learned that learning is a journey, and there's actually value in adopting sort of this position of saying, "Hey, I'm going to try and learn as many things as possible."
Hmm.
And a lot of hard work for sure. Consulting is actually a pretty high stress environment where you work with a client over a short period of times, and most of the time when you start an engagement with a client, you really have no clue as to what their business is. I remember one of my assignments was to figure out how a factory could deliver more products without increasing investment. So they wanted to it was a soap. They were selling soap detergents like liquid soap for dishwashers and stuff,
Yeah.
right? And the manufacturing process for that is actually quite fixed. You need to have a big tower that basically processes chemicals to make the detergents. And they didn't want to invest more, but at the same time they were trying to figure out how they could get more output out of the same investments. And so you're coming into this, and of course you have to figure out, well, how do I think about the problem differently, right? And
Yeah.
that's actually one of the values that consultants bring, and maybe it's one of my learnings over time is to always try and take a step back and try to look at problems in a different way, right? Because there's of course lots of people that have looked at it already, and maybe they've looked at it from a perspective that didn't enable them to find a solution. And your value may be to take a step back and bring a different perspective to the problem, and so helping find a solution with that.
Yeah, very much so. Overall, can you share with us something about your career path that might have been a bit unusual or different that could help the students who are thinking about their future careers?
Well, the one thing that's a bit unusual is I came to the United States 25 years ago, and it had to be for 2 years. So
All right.
that tells you a little bit about how life is interesting in some ways, where there's some things that of course you can plan, and you can obviously try to, if you do have a passion and something that you really want to do, then of course it's easier to put your mind to it and try to achieve it. In my case, it was a bit different, in
Hmm.
the sense that I always liked the journey and the process of learning different things, as opposed to focus on one side. And yeah, what's been unusual is that been here 25 years now, and lived in 5 different cities in the United States, and
All right.
I'm still enjoying to be here, and yeah,
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I've been here 9 years now, and I've lived in three different cities, so I'm enjoying it
yeah.
as well. It's pretty good.
hmm
Okay, let's move on to education and training. Can you explain what your education path looked like?
My education, as in school, when I went to school.
Yeah, well, what did you do to get
Yeah, yeah. As I said, I mean, there was definitely some things that I knew I was good at, right? So I was good in math, for one. I was good in conceptualizing things.
Yeah.
I knew sort of early on that I was not the kind of person that liked to get deep into details in any particular problem, right? And so if you think about different people will have different skills and different aptitudes to as to how they look at a problem, right? Some folks will want to get really deep and into the details and understand the process from left to right.
Hmm.
I was more of the type of person that like to take steps back and look at processes overall, as opposed to deep into one.
Hmm.
Uh, and yeah, and I had I suppose I had a rational mind. As I said, I was pretty good in math. I knew I was good in math, but I was not good enough perhaps to be a great engineer, right?
Hmm.
Learn very high level physics and math. So I was more steered towards the things that I knew I had no interest in than the things that where I knew I had a lot of interest in. And so math and sort of this rational aspect, took me to business school, as opposed to engineering school, as opposed to law school, right?
Hmm.
And so these are some of the choices that I made early on in my life, to say, well, I don't want to be an engineer, I don't want to be a lawyer, I don't want to be a doctor. And so these are some things that I knew were not passions of mine. So
Hmm.
business school, from that perspective, was probably the things that leaves quite a bit of avenues open. So I went into that, again, as part of a journey, not as part of a seeking for a destination.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, so you've mentioned maths quite a bit there, and you're a finance director, so I
Yeah,
think that answers my next
yeah.
question.
Yeah, and it turned
Um,
out okay then. And
yeah, I was going to say, did
uh,
your education guide your career? And I think it did. So I don't need to go down that route. So, what education,
uh,
training, or certifications have you required? Have you acquired over the years?
uh, Certificates.
Yes,
Like,
certificates or training,
yeah.
education. What have you acquired over the years?
Yeah, look, I mean, from just a school academic point of view, I have a business degree, so I didn't feel the need to go after something different after that. I
Hmm.
was fortunate enough to always work for companies that put a lot of emphasis in continuous learning, right? So I had a chance to over the years to do a combination of what they call executive education. So you go out for a week at a
Hmm.
particular university and you take an education. And I remember one of the first ones that I did because again, I didn't start in finance, right? So before I had my right after I had my first job in finance, I thought, oh, okay, maybe I need to learn a little bit more about finance than I do, and that was 15 years ago. And so I went to a business school and took a crash course on finance, and so did that. But then over the years, also in leadership, right?
Hmm.
Trying to not only understand a little bit better how to be a better manager, but how to be a better leader,
Hmm.
how to work in teams. How to work in teams from that what's called disciplinary teams. So
Hmm.
how do you work with, in a team where you have maybe an engineer, maybe a process person, maybe a marketing person, maybe a salesperson, and, really trying to understand that, different people will come from different perspectives at a given problem, and all of these perspectives, need to be listened to,
Yeah.
and are all valuable, right? So, just how do you get the best out of a team? So, spent quite a bit of time over the years trying to be a better manager myself, and yeah,
Yeah, that's excellent. I mean, that's a great thing about Microsoft, that culture of learning.
yeah,
Is something I thoroughly enjoy, you know. Here's a good one for you. What advice would you give your younger self if you had to choose your career path all over
yeah.
again?
Maybe to be yeah, I would say, one of the things that, of course, I discovered a bit later, right, is that I had a real passion for technology. Now, of course, I do work for a technology company, but also in my spare time, I've always loved, working with whether it's computers, whether it's software, and I'm actually a self-taught programmer, so
Wow.
um, I taught myself how to it's basic stuff, nothing but I do, for instance, one of the things that I do, spend quite a bit of my spare time these days is in the area of home automation. So how do you get, your different things in your house, whether it's the lights to turn on or whether it's to put sensors on temperature and so that is one area where I actually learned by myself
Mhm.
how to program these different things yeah, and so maybe, it's always easy to, well, it's always much easier to look at things in the rear view mirror. But, honestly, I should have caught much earlier in my life that I like technology, and I spent the first 9 years of my professional life outside of technology. So,
Mm.
you can't redo the past, but if I had to give myself a piece of advice, I would tell myself, hey,
Straight into
just
that. Yeah.
go to technology much faster.
Yeah, give Microsoft a call, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Especially in what is it, early 90s. If I had given a call to Microsoft in the early
Ah,
90s, that would have
yeah,
been
exactly.
quite awesome.
Different world. You might not be where you are now, you know?
Maybe not.
You never know. All right,
Yeah.
so we've got a couple of questions left. Are there any resources or any additional information that you think is important for students to know if they're interested in the type of work that you do?
Yeah, I think in terms of look, I mean, there's a certain age to learn about, financial concepts for sure, and but I think if someone has an interest in finance, right, is to try. I mean, obviously these days there's lots of opportunities for kids to learn in a variety of ways, and whether you tackle finance from the perspective of portfolio management, like play around with stocks, and that's one aspect of finance. If someone maybe want to start their own little business, and yeah, be the accountant for it, and understanding the concept of the difference between revenue and profit. I think it's something that that is actually very useful.
Yeah.
But then I think that the finance is one of those disciplines where it's important to be technical, but it's also important to have a very solid business judgment, right? The best financial people, I think, are the people that certainly are good technically, right? But the reality is that they also need to be supporting. Finance is a support function, right? We support the business, and so it's important to also have a rounded sort of business understanding on
Hmm.
how the value that we bring to a business leader is to help them set metrics that are important for them, track progress against metrics, making sure that they understand how business needs to be done in a compliant way,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So that no one gets in trouble. And so these are things that can be acquired over time.
That's good. That's good. Thank you. Okay, so as we close, do you have a last piece of advice or inspiration that you'd like to share with the students that are listening today?
Um, well, I think that we talked a lot about um, areas of interest and whether someone might be more interested in finance versus marketing and so on and so forth. I think one of my learnings over my career has been that, in fact, the things that made the most difference in my career were actually the people that I was working for and
Hmm.
working with, right? So I talked about how I started as a business consultant, and then over time I had different roles before getting into finance, and really, all these roles were interesting per se, but what made some of them really really interesting were actually the people that I was working with.
Yeah.
I guess the learning or the piece of advice is when choosing a job, right? Choose your boss,
Hmm.
right? Choose the people you work with as much as you can, because you can be in a great job on paper and have,
Yeah.
miserable because you don't get along with your boss, or your boss doesn't not appreciate you, etc. Or you can have a job that on paper doesn't sound like much, but the people you're working with are making it worth every single day. And
Yeah.
so let's not forget the human aspect of this, because that's actually what the most important part in my view.
That's absolutely fantastic. That and great sentiment as well. So Mario, that's it. That's all the questions. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope the students enjoyed the conversation, and thank you again.
Thank you, Jay. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Cheers.
All right.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.